Okay, so today let's continue where we left off, right? So usually we have covered most of the things, right? We know the four main pillars of IAM. Am I audible? Like the voice is clear, right? Guys, my voice is clear, correct? Okay, I should be audible now. Okay, so what I was saying is we already know the four main pillars of IAM, right? Usually on which IAM works on. Let me do a recap and then we continue, okay? So the main thing was like the main four, you can say, pillars of IAM are: first one is users, right? Then it was groups, then it was roles, and the last one is called as policy. Okay. Now, what are these, and what were the, like if I give you a quick summary of what those are. So users are anyone who can use management console and log into that via ID and password, right? So basically us, like humans, who can log in to console, sorry, console via user name and password. Usually they are referred to as users. Anyone, by the way, anyone, even if that is a non-human user, doesn't matter, right? If anyone has a username and password and can log into the console via that using this, also like they can log in via CLI also via tokens, but the same thing, right? So anyone, usually anyone who has username and password that can log into the console, right? And they also have CLI access that they can log in via tokens. They can use tokens to log in there, right, and do things or authenticate themselves. Like they have the rights to authenticate themselves, right? Groups are basically group of users, right? Group of users, but the only difference here is here we give permission. So permission is given to the group. Permission is given to the group, and they are automatically assumed by the users, right? So here we don't have to manage individual users. So that's why the groups were created, so that we do not have to manage individual users. That's why the groups were created. Like that is the only purpose of groups, so that we don't have to manage individual permissions on groups. That's the only reason. Like there's no other benefit of groups, by the way. It's the only one, so that we can put different users into different groups, and then we can assign them different permissions, so that we don't have to go and individually manage and give permissions to individual users. So there's no other purpose for groups. Now roles are very important because usually they are the widely used things in AWS right now. Widely used. Not even users are used that much. So roles are something that are used very widely, right? And what does they do? Basically, roles are created for non-human users or non-human identities, you can say. So usually these are created for non-human users, or you can say non-human identities. Both are the same thing, right? They were initially created for that, but now users can also assume role and use them. Okay, so now human identities can also assume and use it, but initially these were created so that they can give temporary access, temporary, sorry for the bad handwriting, temporary access to non-human identities, and users as well. These roles can be assumed, like they will not directly use the permissions on these roles. The permissions cannot be used directly. Usually anyone who wants to use a role, they will have to assume the role, as well as they will need permission to use the roles. Like we can granulate the permissions and only those things can use it, right? So if you remember, in roles we have two kinds of roles, mainly two kinds. One is a service role. Service roles were used by only AWS services. They are restricted to AWS services only. No one else can use it. These are not for humans. And earlier they only had service roles. Mostly they had service roles. Like account roles were not that you can say efficient at that time. So account roles were like very rare at that time. But now they have like enhanced it. So account roles can be used by like third party. These can be used by third party, right? And human users. So third party users and human users both can use the account roles. Okay. So these are for that. But these server roles can only be used by AWS service roles, sorry. This can be only be used by AWS services. Okay. And there's a list of it, like, or whatever service you create the role for, only that particular service can use. For example, I create for Lambda. For example, I have to create for Lambda, right? Only Lambda can use that role. If it is created for EC2, only EC2 can create that role, like use that role. No one else can use it, right? And the last and the important thing, like this is the most important, you can say, because these are technically, these are permissions which all these three use. So without this, all of them will not work, because obviously these are permissions, right? And without permissions, obviously nothing can work on AWS. AWS is built in a way where if you don't have proper permissions, by default, AWS will isolate you for everything. Like by default, everything is blocked or denied. So here you have to specifically allow. How do you allow? You give permissions. So if you have the permission, you'll be allowed. If not, then obviously you cannot do anything on the AWS. Okay, we will see. Also, the thing that we will be talking about today, right? We have already seen everything, by the way. Most of the things we have already seen, that how to like give those permissions. But those were like kind of UI based, user interface based. Today, I'll show you the things that we have not discussed because we didn't have that much time. So we did not discuss in the previous class. That is, first of all, how to use CLI, right? How to use CLI, and I'll show you like how that, because we have seen this console login. We did that, right, with the username and password. We already do that, or every time we do that. But today I'll show you how to use the CLI, right, and how to granulate the roles via JSON. So JSON is the format in which the files are written. Just like you have Python, you have PHP, right? Those are coding languages. So in this manner, you have something called a JSON. JSON is basically used by machines. Like machines use them to read configurations and everything. Okay. So the IAM rules that we write, or the permissions that we give, is written into JSON format. So this is the name of the format. Just remember this format. This is very important, because usually the rules are written in these formats, right? You can go and do it via UI also. But the thing is, usually what happens is, most of the times when you're writing, for example, codes in Terraform, in like any coding language, right? There you won't get the AWS AI, sorry, UI. You will not get, right? Because it's not like you will go and create the rules first and then come here and then write the code. Usually whenever we are writing codes, right, we are giving the permissions, we are assigning the policies and everything from the code itself. We don't go to UI. We don't do that. So in this manner, usually when we have to give permission, we have to give them permission via the JSON. Like we use this JSON format to give permissions directly from the Terraform or a cloud formation or whatever coding language you're using to like do things on AWS, right? So I'll be showing you those things, like how those JSON formats are used and how the CLI is used and all sorts of things, these things. So today we'll be discussing that, because from UI, we have already seen that. So today we will see like whatever we cannot do with UI, we'll be doing it via either the CLI, that is the terminal, or this black window, you can say. This called terminal, the black window. We'll do it via CLI, and we will do it via this. I'll show you the granulation via the JSON files, like giving permissions via JSON now. So we'll not be using UI. So when I go here on the IAM, right here, when I go to roles, let me just show you what I'm trying to say. Okay. So when I click on create role, for example, let's create a role for let's do for EC2, for example. Next, right? And I'm not giving it a permission right now. I'll do next, and you see this thing. This is written in JSON format. This is called a JSON format, right? So whenever I'm giving a permission, usually I'll be giving permission into JSON format. So if I go next and give it a name, maybe just test role, right? If I go here and I create a role. So if I go to test now, this role is created for EC2 because this is a AWS service role. Okay, remember there are two roles: service role and an account role. So account roles are mainly used by assuming, like it can be used by users and third-party softwares to assume this. Right? I'll show you that as well. So when I go to test role, here what happened is I don't have any policy. I don't have any permissions. Policy means permissions, right? I don't have any permissions. So particularly this role, if I attach this to any EC2 instance, that EC2 instance won't be able to do anything. For example, I go to, let me go to EC2. Oh, sorry, wrong place. One second. Yeah, let me go to EC2. Because with this EC2 example, I'll be able to show you like both the things, the CLI thing also, and like how to use the AWS CLI also, and how to use this role thing as well. So for example, I create a EC2 instance, name web, or web should be okay. Just name. So if I go here, free tier is okay. It's okay. We don't need this. Let's enable this thing. It's okay. It's just for testing. Okay, now if I go here and click on view instances, one of them is running. View that it's okay. Okay, so it's running now. Let's try to connect. Okay, so what I'll do, sudo apt what I'll try to do here is, first I'll try to do it with the role, right? First I'll demonstrate the role and then I'll show you the AWS CLI. Okay, so by default, if you see here on this web instance, there is no role attached, right? If I go to security, usually you'll find it here. If I go to security and modify IAM role, like whatever role is there, you can just go and modify. The problem is there is no IAM role right now. So we have already created a role, right? That EC2 service role. So when I scroll drop down, the role should appear, this thing. And if I update, so now what happened is the role is attached, right? But remember the role does not have any permissions. Now what I'll do is I'll just try to see something. Let me go to S3 and I'll try to access S3 bucket. There's no bucket yet. Let me create one. Just use any random name. It's okay. Just create one. Yeah, it's creating. Okay, the bucket is created, right? So this is just a random name, okay, for the bucket. What I'll do is I'll try to connect. So I'll show you the CLI thing as well. I'll try to connect with the bucket and like list out the bucket from EC2 instance. I'll see like if I can run, if I run the AWS command, am I able to authenticate this EC2 instance to list out all the buckets? Because as I said, whatever you can do from the UI or this console, you can do it via CLI also, like with commands. Okay, command line interface. CLI is called command line interface, like an interface where you can do anything with a command rather than going and like using mouse by clicking and navigating via the user interface. You don't need a user interface in CLI. This is a CLI, proper CLI. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll try to authenticate myself, because if I list out something, if I want to list like how many buckets I have or what kind of bucket I have, right? I'll have to list out that. Just like we do this ls command. Ls means list, right? So this same thing, AWS also gives you some commands that you can use to list out. But the thing is, AWS CLI is not installed here, so it is asking me to like install one. But the problem is, if I use this thing is something that doesn't work. If I click here, oh, okay, it's working. Oh, fine. Okay. Earlier it doesn't used to work, so you have to like go and install the CLI from scratch. Let's see. Let me see. So if I do AWS, then pick the version. Okay, the CLI is correct. Okay, so you can do sudo apt install AWS CLI there. It will install it. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll try to list out the bucket. So basically, let me look at the command. What that command is, AWS CLI list S3 bucket. See the command. So the command is okay. AWS S3 ls, like AWS S3 and list out the buckets. Okay, let's see. If I run this command, let's see what happens. So if I do sudo, I think sudo should not be used, but let's see. Oh yeah, you'll have to use sudo. So if I do sudo, there. It's saying that you're not authorized to perform this permission. List all buckets. You cannot list out the buckets. This EC2 instance doesn't have permission. Okay. So the thing is, there are two things. Either like even if I remove the role, right, it will still not be able to do it, because usually, as I said, if you remember that anything in AWS, right, like each services are isolated to each other. Like you cannot access one service with other service. For example, if I'm like what I'm trying to do is I'm on the EC2 instance, right? This is a service, right? This is an AWS service. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use like connect from one service to other service, right? This is S3. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use this service and this service, right? Like connect both of these together. So what I'm trying to do is I'm listing out from this, I'm sending a command to list out all the buckets from the same account, right? It's already there. But the thing is, it is not letting it happen because it is denying. It is saying that this particular bucket does not have permission to access S3. And these are done deliberately because if, for example, your EC2 instance is compromised and AWS do not isolate anything, then this particular EC2 instance can compromise your whole environment. So by default, what AWS has done is that one service cannot talk to other service until they are authenticated. So EC2 is not authenticated right now. Like EC2 has no permission to connect to S3. So this connection can be done in two ways. First way is like either you can use a role that I'm demonstrating right now. Either you can use a role, right? The role should have the permission, S3 permission, right? And if this role has S3 permissions, proper permissions, then this EC2 can assume the role, right? It can assume it and then connect and see things like list out the buckets or see what is inside the bucket and everything like it can do. And the second thing is I can create an access key. I can use an access key. Access keys are created by users. So that is not a role, right? So a user can create its access key. And with that access key, I can access the buckets. But same thing, the user should have S3 permission. Then only I can access it, right? So in like, if I tell you in short, you can use it as a role, you can use it as a user, but the thing is that particular user or that particular role should have proper S3 permissions and only then it can access. So first I'll demonstrate this role thing and then I'll demonstrate how you can use the user access tokens to do the same thing, right? But remember one more thing again, roles are the safest way because it does not require any authentication. You don't need to generate an access code. You don't need to remember and store your access keys and access codes anywhere, right? So username and password is not required. And the second thing is because see, this username and password is required as well as they are permanent, kind of permanent, right? It doesn't change automatically. Roles are temporary. They give you temporary access. So after like 1 hour or 2 hour, the access goes away. Okay, so that's why these are safe. So basically, I'm demonstrating this first, and then I'll show you this access one. So here we'll be demonstrating two things. First of all, how we can use role to access other services, and second thing, remember I talked about JSON right now. So here what I'll do is I will create the permissions not via the user interface or not graphically, but I will use this JSON method to show you how the permissions are granted. Okay, I'll show you both the ways, like a simple way and a little bit technical way. So if I go to IAM now, see this role doesn't have any permission. That's why I'm getting this issue that, okay, I'm trying to assume this role. You see this role, test role, it is trying to assume that role and then like trying to list out the bucket. But this permission is missing from the particular IAM role. S3 list all my buckets. Okay, I'll show you granulation and like full access, both the things. So if I go back here on here, what I'll do, I'll just create an inline policy. Because if I do attach policy, first of all, I'll need to have a policy, or either I can create an inline policy. So create, here you will see visual, right? If you remember, this is what we used earlier. We were doing this S3, right? We were doing this S3 like this, and then we click on it, and then it will ask like what permission you want to give. But this is all UI, user interface, right? I don't want user interface right now. I'm trying to do it via JSON. So you click on JSON. Here, this thing is technically, you can say a little bit confusing. It can get a little bit confusing, but if you understand, so here the thing is like when you are working with coding, right? Uh, there is something called a syntax error, right? So basically, if the syntax, like if things are not written in this proper form, this will fail. It will not work. You have to write everything specifically. When working with codes, right? There is something called a syntax. So if you don't follow that proper procedure, even if one comma is missing, even if one space is there extra, if it is not needed, it will stop working. So this thing is sensitive. Coding is a bit sensitive. That's what it makes it like, that's what makes coding hard. So if you don't follow the syntax, the code will not work. Even if you have written the correct code, doesn't matter. If you forgot a comma, even a full stop or anything that was required to have, it will not work. Let me demonstrate, okay? So for example, whenever you are writing something, right, whenever you're giving any permission, you can give permission here. The moment I click here, it gives me option, right? If I do S3 like this, I can click S3 and here, either I can go list all action. If I do this, see, it automatically give the permission, right? So either I can do like this, or what I can do is I can do the permission manually. So if you see right now, this thing, how do I, let me zoom it. Yeah, okay. So I hope that is clear now. So if you see here, it says S3 star. If you remember the meaning of star, we have discussed that, like why was Linux important in our case, like why we were emphasizing on you guys should learn Linux, because here we are using things from Linux only, right? Star means everything, full access, because we are not specifying anything, we are saying anything that starts with S3. So all the services have their initials. For example, I want to give permission for Lambda, just showing, okay, I'm not giving that permission, just showing. If I do this thing and here, if I do all action, you see what happened? Lambda colon and then star. That means any permission for Lambda is given. But remember, usually when we are doing something, right, we don't want to give full permissions to everything. We don't want to do that. Usually we want to granulate. Granulate means, for example, this particular instance can only list out the buckets, like cannot do anything. It cannot write the bucket. It cannot delete anything. It can just read the bucket, like how many buckets are there, if it wants to see. I want to give it only that permission. So if you read this permission, here it says, this particular role does not have what permission? This permission, list all my buckets. So if I copy, go back, where's that? Here, okay. What I'll do, I'll just replace this with that one, sorry, like this. Now what will happen is, I don't have full permission, but I have a specific permission from the whole list. For example, if I click here, right, you see there's a very long list, of permissions. And this is called granulation, where you are not giving all the permissions, you're just giving what is required. Nothing extra, not even a thing. And these are all the permissions that can be given. So when we do all, when we use star, star means give all the permissions below. Read also, write also. So they have written, you see, read and write. So this is read and write permission. This is read only permission. So anything, let me tell you something, right? Very easy to remember. Anything that starts with list, you see list here? Anything that starts with list, anything that starts with describe, right? And anything that starts with get. List, describe, and get. Any permission that starts with this is always a read-only permission. There's nothing extra. There's no other, you can say, extra permissions. So if you are looking for read-only, if you want to know, okay, but just by looking at the permission that it is read-only or there is any write permission also. So any permission that starts with list, describe, and get, they are all read-only. And if there is any other permission like put or from or any other, like anything apart from this, get, list, and describe, then it can be a write permission also. But wherever you see like all the list, describe, and get permission, that means they are all read only. So if I give this permission right now, right, and I do next, I'm just giving this permission for now. Okay, you see this saying this permission is not valid, this policy is not valid. Yeah, it is saying this policy is not valid. So the thing is, why it is not valid is there are three parts in a permission. Remember one thing, in this JSON, there are three parts. First part is what is the effect? Why are you creating this policy or this permission, right? Why are you doing that? Like, what is this policy saying? So first is effect. Is this policy allowing or denying? There are two effects only. Either you can allow, either you can deny. If I say allow, under that, what am I allowing or what kind of permission I'm allowing? So if this policy is attached to someone, this policy will allow. If I put deny, that means this policy will start denying the actions. Whatever action I do here, actions are the permissions that you're giving. Okay. Whatever permission I give here, am I going to allow it or deny it? So if I do deny here, and remember one thing, see the way the permissions are given. So if you see allow starts with capital A and then it's all normal, right? Statement starts with capital S. But here the action S3 is small letters. But here you see a difference. It's list L capital, all A capital, my M capital, buckets B capital. If like it, I'm just telling you how sensitive these JSON policies are. Okay. So if I do, if I make this A small letters, this will fail. It's that sensitive. It needs to be specifically in this manner. If you are not writing in this manner specifically, even one word is missing, like if you make this as capital, this thing, it will fail. It will not work. So it's so sensitive. Okay. So first thing is the effect. Second thing is the action, like what action you are going to perform with this policy. And the last thing is where. This is the resource. Like on this, give me a second, guys. Come on. Okay. So yeah. So first thing is allow. Second thing is what am I going to allow, right? What permissions? And the third thing is where am I going to allow this? So resource means on which resource this policy will work on. So again, same thing. Either you can allow for all. If I do a star like this, star means allow for all. It doesn't matter what resources, this policy can work with everything, any resource, right? So star, again, star means everything. Okay. So if I do S3 star, that means give all the S3 related permissions. If I do star for resource, resource means doesn't matter what resource. So what do I mean by this? This thing is for EC2 instance. Remember, this is a EC2 instance permission where like this role is built for that EC2 instance. Now what will happen is if I put star, star means any EC2 instance, any EC2 instance, right, can assume this policy or use this policy and like do anything or do this, not anything, like usually this permission can be used by them. But if I put a policy, if I put a specific resource name here, yeah, if I put a specific resource name here, then what will happen is only that particular resource can access it. Okay, so you can specify, can you mute your mic? Okay, thank you. Okay, so as I'm saying, if you put a specific resource here, right? Like resource, how do you put? By the ARN. If you put an ARN of the resource here, remember ARNs were unique identities that are given to each and every resource, right? And it is unique. Unique means this thing is only specific for that particular resource on that particular account, and this is global, by the way, right? So it cannot be replicated. So that on AWS can specifically verify that this resource belongs to this account, and this is where it originates from. So these ARNs are unique. That's why under resources we use the ARN. Okay, so if I put a resource name, if I don't put anything, if I just do star, where's the star? Here. If I just do star, right, that means it can be used by anyone. If I do next, there, it let me create, right? And here you see limited to all the resources. The access is limited because I only have list only permissions, and but it is usable by the all, like any resource can be used, right? Okay, so if I give it a name, let me give what should I name it? S3 policy. Okay, so what I did is I created a policy which can allow to read all the buckets, right, to all the resources. Star means all the resources. If I put the ARN of this bucket EC2 instance, then only this EC2 instance can use. Even if the role is attached to anything else or anyone else, that resource will not be able to use anyone that particular policy, because that particular policy will be restricted to that particular resource. So if you put an ARN here, this whole policy will only allow that particular resource. That's why the resource section is there. So if I put a EC2 instance ARN here, only that EC2 instance will be able to use this policy and no one else. So if I'm attaching this policy to this EC2 instance, right, to this one, and I give another EC2 instance ARN here, this policy will still not work because the policy ARN is wrong, right? The resource is assigned to someone else. So that's why it is very you can say sensitive, and it's very important to know what you're writing and who you are writing for. So now this thing will have the list all buckets permission. If I go here and run the same command again, let's see. You see, I can see the bucket. But now if I try to do something else, maybe list object in a bucket, let's say CLI S3 bucket. Yeah, bucket commands. That's unless we have already done. What else do we have? Make bucket. No, I don't want to make bucket. Still, that will fail. Like you can create the bucket with this command. So if you want to create a new bucket, maybe like if I go here and paste and I give the name to the bucket, a bucket will be created for me. For example, I give any unique name. Again, access denied. It is saying that now this particular user or the role, right, they cannot create a bucket. This permission is missing. Now what I can do, if I need, oh, by the way, remember, this is saying create. Anything that says create, as I said, list, describe, and get. If you don't have that, right, that means that is a write permission. So if you see, that is not list, that is not describe, and that is not get. It is a create permission. Create means that is a write permission. Like it will not read, but it will write it, do the changes. So if I copy this and I want to give this permission now, what I'll do is I'll click on edit. Okay, so now it's not like I can go here, enter, and paste the bucket permission. It won't work. Remember the first thing, whenever you are giving multiple permissions, right? Even the multiple resources, The format is always the same, like this. See, resources is also here. So if you are creating those things, remember the extension. Sorry, remember the syntax. First of all, they should follow the same syntax. You see, everything after this colon is in double quotes. Everything is in double quotes. This one is double quotes. This one is double quotes. This one is also in double quotes. So I cannot put the permissions directly like this. I will have to put that in double quotes. You see, I am seeing unexpected error. So if I do double quotes like this, you see it got green. Green means everything is fine. It's fine. The permission is given properly. Now there is one more thing. It's not still correct. By the way, this thing is still not correct. Okay. If I do next, it will give me the error. Yeah. We cannot summarize the policy. Why? Let me tell you why. What happened here? Yeah. Let me open that again. Okay. Yeah. Let me tell you the reason. So if I do enter double quotes and paste, right, the permission, still it will fail because usually when you are writing the next line or you're adding something, right? In this JSON, remember in JSON, whenever you're adding something, this is called an array. Array means it's like a box where we can put multiple values, right? So if you're putting something as a next value, because this is the first value and this is the next value, there should always be a comma. The last value will never have a comma. That's how this script knows that okay, here we are ending, like after this we don't have to write anything. But if I have to add anything else, for example, I want to add one more permission here, so I will have to do like this, comma, like this, and then give the permission. But if this is the last permission, I don't want to give any other permission, I'll remove the comma. Comma means end of this particular line, affect end of this thing, sid. You see, after affect there's a comma because you're starting an action. After action, there's a comma because you're starting a resource. But after resource, there's no comma. Comma means it will, like, you will have to add something else as well. Okay. So if you're writing a next action, because you're adding to it, you'll have to always use a comma. So if I add anything else, I'll have to use a comma and then write the next one. But if this is my end, I will not use a comma. So comma is telling me that okay, this is the end. Sorry, this is the, like, you will have to add something. But if there's no comma, that means you are saying that okay, this is my end. After this, I don't want to use anything. So you see here we are ending, comma. Here we are ending, comma. Here we are ending, comma. And here there is no comma because that's an end. Like I don't want to add anything else. So if I do next now, there it worked. See, now it's list and write. Write means because I'm creating a bucket, right? So I have the bucket permission. So I can do the same command now, and you will see now what happened. What permission? Okay, okay. I think it's not saved yet. 1 second, let me see. On the resource. Okay, okay. Yeah, the permission is there. It takes a little bit of time. Oh, there. Yeah, it takes a bit of time to like connect. So here now it created the bucket. So if I go here, I should see 2 buckets now. If I refresh, there, see, I have one more bucket. So like this, you will create JSON. You can say you can create JSON policies in JSON manner. So whenever we're writing the codes, right? When we'll be writing Terraform and when we'll be writing anything else, right? Or in the coding language, there we won't get this GUI. We won't get this graphical terminal. So in this case, what will happen is we will have to remember this code. Let me show you something. I have a code already there. Let me show you that, like how the thing looks like. Okay. So for example, this is my Terraform. That's not the one. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, there it is. So if I open this, VS Code. Why is it all blank? That was just for testing. Wow. I have removed all of them. Oh, no, I have it. Okay. Yeah, this is, by the way, called Terraform. See, this is how we write Terraform code. This is all Terraform. See? So when we'll be writing all these codes, right, we will have to, we don't have the authority to go to AWS here, right? It's not like we go to AWS and then it gets created here. We will have to write everything here on this same place, right? And when we'll be writing the codes, giving permissions, we will have to give permissions directly here. And those permissions are given in a JSON format. You cannot like just go to like this place, create the role, and then come back. You can do that, by the way. You can do that. But usually, whenever we are writing something, right? Whenever we are creating an infra in companies, we don't want to create things manually. What if this policy gets deleted somehow? Now, if it is deleted, right? Someone will have to come back and create the policy. But because it was a organization-based policy, right? They would have multiple permissions in single policy. How will you know how many policies were created? What kind of policy was created if it is deleted? As a human, you will never know. There's no way, right? How do you know? Like if you have joined new and someone deleted it, how do you know? Because you're new here, you have never seen that policy, like what kind of policy was there, right? Because they create specific policies. They will not just give full permissions. They would have like multiple policies in the same place, multiple of them. So usually what happens is usually you don't know, right? If someone is deleted or something, it got corrupted or anything happened, you don't know. Even maybe you have to like replicate the infra or on somewhere else. So you will have to go and manually create that thing. And sometimes you will never know like what was there. It was deleted. So in this case, companies want a backup or something that they can rely on. Even if that thing is gone, they can replicate and recreate those things without any problems. So in this case, what companies do, they write everything in a code format so that whenever needed, they can just run the code again and everything gets deployed again. So the best part is the new person, whoever is there, they don't need to remember anything. They can just deploy the code because the code is already written. Every details is already in the code. You just need to deploy and everything will be recreated. That's why companies use IAMs and they use Terraforms or coding languages to like create those things, right? Via code. So that's why this JSON format is like important to understand. So remember, there is only three things basically in a permission. There is the effect. If I do deny, if I do it, for example, if I do, let me do deny. Let me just show you. So right now these things are working, right? If I do list permission, there it is listing, right? I can see both the buckets. But let me change this allow to deny. Let me change it to deny. And remember, you have to give it in this specific format only. Otherwise, it will not work. B should be capital. The first letter should be capital here. And next. Here you will see all resources, same thing. Read write is there, right? And it is explicitly deny. Now it is not allow, it is deny. That means once this policy will be created, this particular permission will be explicitly deny. And remember one thing, guys, a very important fact, right? If okay, let me first show you this and then I'll tell you about that. Yeah. Okay, it takes a little bit of time. There, access denied. So why? Because it is denying it. Now, a question for you. So, if I create a policy, right? Maybe I create two policies. One with deny, maybe deny like I cannot list any buckets, right? I deny the list, and then I create one more permission to allow the same thing, like it can list, and both the policies are attached to the same role, and this role is being used by that same EC2 instance, right? That we are working with. So what do you think what will happen? Because there is allow also, there's deny also. what will happen if I list, if I run the list command? What will happen? Remember, both the policies are connected to the same role. Like this role has same. This role has deny also. This role has allow also for the same thing, for the same permission. It is allowing also and denying also. And then when I go to EC2 instance and run this list command, what will happen? Can anyone answer that? Like, can anyone wants to try to guess what will happen? Guys? By the way, this particular formula or this particular thing works everywhere the same. So can anyone wants to try? Like what will happen? The particular role has list also, which is allowing the list, and deny also for the same permission. What do you think will happen when the EC2 will run the list command with this rule, which has both allow and deny for the same permission? Anyone wants to take a guess?
Please, can you come back with a question?
Okay,
like for proper understanding.
Okay, I'm saying, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like right now, what we are doing is we are using a role, right? That role is attached to an EC2 instance, right? And that role is allowing the EC2 instance to read the buckets. I can list out all the buckets in my list, right? I can list out. List command is there. So what happens is this EC2 instance has the list permission, right? Now, what I'm doing is either we can have a allow, either we do deny, right? Like we can create a policy. Now, what I'm doing is on the same role, I'm creating two policies. One allow, right? And one deny. Okay. But the permissions are same. I'm allowing to list the buckets and I'm denying also to list the buckets. The same role has two like same permissions, but two different, you can say, methods. One is allowing and one is denying. What will happen when I run this list command for on the EC2?
To block.
It will what? I didn't hear you.
Because the way I understand, you said if it happens that if the command is denied, right? What happens is that. So I was saying, I was trying to say that if it can block you, there's the therefore means it's blocked. It will block.
And okay, sorry. My question is, what if you have both allow and deny at the same time? What will happen? Will it allow or deny?
So I think deny can override allow.
Yes. And this particular formula works everywhere in AWS or any other cloud. Okay. If you have an allow or an deny, that's why this thing is called explicit deny, right? So what will happen is whenever you have a deny and an allow for the same thing or for the same permission, okay, explicitly every time the deny will take over. So what you will think is, for example, for example, I have created policies, right? Because if you remember, I said you can have multiple policies in the same role, right? So for example, what you did, you created multiple policies. Maybe you can have 10 policies at the same time, right? So sometimes what happens is in a hurry, right? In companies, what we do in a hurry, what we do, we just create a new policy. Someone says that, hey, I don't see this permission. I want a permission to list out all the buckets or do something on the bucket, right? What we do, we just create an allow policy and give that permission. Correct. But for example, due to security reasons, someone has already denied it. The same permission is denied. And we have not seen, right? And the guy is saying that, hey, I cannot still see that. Like, I don't see the permission. So you will get confused. Like, hey, I allowed it. Why can't you see it? Right? I will allow. So how do you know what is the issue? Either you go and open each policies to see if there's a deny. Usually people don't do that, by the way, because deny is so uncommon, right? Deny is so uncommon. People don't do it. Because if you remember one thing, by default, if you don't allow, Remember this term I use every time. By default in AWS, everything is denied. Everything. The moment you allow, only then you will get the permission, right? So, okay, can anyone tell me if everything is already denied, and that's why we use the allow permission, right? To give the permission, because you are already denied. So until you have the allow permission, you cannot use it. Correct? So why do we use a deny then? Because everything is by default denied. So why do you use a deny? Like what can be the reason we go for a deny? Or why do even AWS bother to give you a deny? Because by default everything is denied. You just need an allow. If you don't have an allow, you're already denied. So what do you think? Why AWS gave us this deny? Anyone wants to take a guess? You understood the question, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So what do you think? Why do we have this deny in the first place? Tricky, right? Just take a guess. No worries. Just think any scenario that comes to your mind. You guys can also try to think of a scenario like where we should use a deny, because by default you're already denied. So if you don't create an allow, you're already denied. So why give a deny in the first place?
So, so I think create a deny again to like block the user. Like,
no, but they're already blocked, right? If you don't have the permission, you're already blocked. Like you will have to allow, specifically allow, right? Then only you will get the permission. So that is already denied. You're by default already denied. So why bother giving a deny? Because you have it. You have a deny. So if I go here and I see this policy, right? If I do not allow any policy, obviously that permission is already gone to me. I cannot use it, right? So why bother giving it a deny? Okay, take one more minute and then I'll tell the answer. Just think. This is where you will have to think out of the box. As a security engineers or security analysts, this will be your job to come up with these crazy things.
Sir, can you ask the question again one more time, please?
Okay. If no one can think, let me answer that. Okay.
It says you should ask the question again.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's what he said.
I'm saying,
sir.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm saying, for example, right? If I don't give any permission here, right? For example, let me do that. I go here. Okay, this is, let me make it allow again. Okay, it is allowed. What I'm doing is I'm removing this permission to create the bucket. Okay, I'm removing this permission and I'm saving it now. Like this. Okay, and now I try to create a bucket now. Right, any random bucket I try to create. Enter. You see, it says I don't have the permission. Correct? So the moment I go and allow that permission, so for example, I need to create one, I'll have to go and allow this permission. So by default, if I don't allow the permission, I'm already denied, right? I cannot do anything without permission. So if I'm already denied and I'm relying on allow, so if anyone allows me, only then I can do anything, right? So if I'm already dependent on allow, and the moment I get allowed, only then I can do. Why even bother give us a deny? So the if I need if I use an effect allow and I allow the action, only then I will be able to use. But still they have given an effect called deny also. There is an allow and there's a deny also. So why, like this will answer your question that why deny is powerful than allow. Okay, that is the answer, by the way. But usually, why bother giving us a deny if we only get the permission when someone is allowed? Did you get the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I think you're giving a deny to like block a particular user.
No, like, see, same thing. I don't allow the user. They are already denied or they're already blocked. So again, we are the same place, right? Because
Yes, sir.
for example, you're the user. I don't give you the permission or I don't allow you to list out the buckets. You're already denied. Correct? Let me
Yes,
answer
sir.
the question. Okay. Let me answer the question.
So,
And that is
so
a
can I
very,
try to answer the question?
yeah, sure.
I think that they still give it denied because I think when you give it denied, it makes it automatically sets it default to always deny, even if it has allowed.
Correct. So yes, that is correct. So basically, let me explain with the scenario. Okay. So think like this. I have a company, right? I have a company. And now as a company, I don't want any user, like by mistake, even by mistake, I don't want any user to give S3 list bucket permission, right? Even by mistake, I don't want anyone to have this permission. So this mistake can happen. So someone maybe asks, by mistake, someone asks that, hey, I don't have the list permission. And someone goes, a user or an administrator goes and add the allow permission. But remember, according to the company, we can never use this policy. We can never use this permission. Correct? But by mistake, someone can do an allow or someone can give an allow permission. Correct? That can happen. That can happen. So for example, you have joined newly. You don't know that you cannot give that permission. Correct? And by mistake, you give that permission. So what will happen here is the particular user will be able to, or they will be allowed to run this command or this like use this permission and do things like list out things or this. See, this permission is just an example. Usually there are more severe permissions that can escalate things, right? So this using this as an example, I'm just explaining that. Correct? So what will happen is, remember, this deny is called explicit deny. Explicit. That is why it is called explicit. By default, you're already denied. But why it is called explicit is that you are setting it as a default. Default means even if you try to allow it, it won't let you do it until you remove this explicit deny. Did you understand what I'm trying to say? So it will restrict you to allow anytime, like it will not let you allow. It will set as a default that, okay, even if you want, you cannot allow it. I won't let you. So it's like a super administrator denying whatever permission is given there, right? And you cannot allow anyone until like the moment explicit deny is there, you cannot allow anyone. You will have to remove the explicit deny first, and then the allow will start working. Did you guys understand the point, what I'm trying to say? For example, someone is going to your home, right? You've already you have for example, there's person one, right? Person one and person two. So maybe you have like 4 members, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this person one is not liked by all these 4 persons from your home, right? So you will never let them in, will you? The person you don't like, will you let them in to your house?
No, sir.
You'll not, right? But what if I'm your guest? I came to your home and this person comes in and rang the bell. I don't know. I don't know, right? I can always open the door. Correct? So usually this deny is kind of like you put a sticker that this particular person can never be allowed, right? So this is called an explicit denial. Like you didn't tell me that this person is not allowed, but what you are doing is you are not even telling, but you are explicitly saying that this person is never allowed in my home. So it's like an explicit deny. You explicitly telling that, okay, this particular thing is never allowed in my environment. So that's what is called an explicit deny. Okay. So as an outsider, I will never know until you tell me. Someone comes in that, hey, this guy is not allowed. Please close the door. Right. So that is an explicit deny. I am not allowed to do that. Even if I can do that, like I can open the door and then let him in. But I'm explicitly denied that you cannot open the door for this person. So just like this, you have something called an explicit deny. So it is not a normal deny. It is called an explicit deny. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why a deny is there. So if I create the particular permission, so for example, if I copy the same permission, let me do that. Let me show you something. Just read this. Just remember this thing, this permission, or I can, yeah, I can show you that later as well. Okay. Let me do one thing. Let me copy this thing. Yeah, I can just copy it. Go back. Let me add the permission as it is so that I can show. Yeah, I can use this one as well. Okay, no worries. I can use this one. Copy. It's okay. So allow is like allowing this list bucket, right? So what I'll do is I'll add one more policy, but this policy will deny the same permission. This will be denied. So I'll go to JSON, remove and paste. I'll just remove this thing. And now this will not allow, this will deny. So we have same permission. One is doing allow and one is doing deny, same permission. So if I do next now, I'll say S3 deny. Okay. Now you have the same permission. One is denying and one is allowing. You see, same permission. One is allow, one is deny, but the whole thing is same. So now if I go here to the EC2 instance and run the command to list out the buckets. Now you see the difference in the error. It says, here it says, where did that thing go? Oh, this is the S3 thing. Okay, let me, oh yeah, okay, let me remove the deny for now. 1 second. I want to show you the main error. Which is the deny one? Yeah, this is the deny one. Okay, let me copy and remove this. I can remove it directly. Just let me remove. Just want to show you something. The difference. Okay, I have removed. Now if I do ls, let me remove this first. ls. Yeah, it is allowing, right? It is allowing. So what if, let me remove the allow also. Where is that thing gone? Yeah, let me remove the allow also. What I need to show you is by that. So for example, there's no permission by default. So if I don't have permission, if I enter, it's time. Okay, now it's gone. So, okay, look at this error where you don't have permission, right? Because by default, you're denied, right? So you're denied. So if you don't have permission, you're already denied. So look at this error. And now let me create that thing again. Let me add. First, I'll create the allow and then deny. Let me create, oh, deny is already there. Let me create an allow as well. I say deny. Okay, now I create an allow. Listen. I do allow. Okay, so now if I run, right, let me just wait a little bit and then run. Okay, now it should be okay. Okay, now do you see a difference in this error? Guys, read both the errors. Do you see a difference? They both are denied, but the error is totally different. Not totally, but like the main thing is different. That why this thing is like denied or why this thing is not working. So if you read here, it says because no identity-based policy allows it. Identity-based policy means you don't have permission to run this command. That is what it means, right? But again, as I said, like you allowed it and the guy is saying that, okay, I still cannot access it, right? So this is how you troubleshoot. Here it is saying that no identity-based access policy is allowing it, right? That means no one is allowing, the policy is not allowing, right? But if you read here, it will say it is not authorized to perform with an explicit deny in the identity-based policy. That means even if you allow, it will not let you allow because there is an explicit deny. So you will have to remove it. So that's how you know that even if I allowed, why this permission is not given to that user, because there's an explicit deny. Right here, it is saying that the policy is not allowing, so you don't have permission. So you go and add the permission, everything will work. But here it is saying there is an explicit deny. Even if there's an allow, doesn't matter. You already have an explicit deny. So until and unless you remove this deny, you cannot have the permission even if you allow. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Guys? Okay. So that's how like you troubleshoot. That's where this thing comes in. Okay, let me remove the role now. Go to the EC2 instance and let me remove the role. So now I'll show you the CLI method, like the access tokens, how the user can use the access token. Now, if there's no role, obviously, if I don't have it, I cannot run the commands because there's nothing to like assume and run. Okay, it's gone, right? So now if I run the command, yeah, it is saying there's no credentials because there's no role to assume. And obviously there's no credentials, like I cannot use any credentials. So it is saying that you can use credentials by running something called AWS configure. AWS configure, what this does is whenever you're using this command, right, as I said, you need something to authenticate yourself, right? Even a service needs something to authenticate, correct? So for authentication, there are three things. Three things means like for a service, not for a user, is if I have a service, right, this service needs to authenticate itself. So how does it authenticate? If it can authenticate by a role, that is the single thing, right? Or it can authenticate by a IAM user. IAM user can authenticate it. But user cannot go and log in from an EC2 instance, right? It's not possible. Like from an EC2 instance, you just have a black window. How will you go to the console and log in with this black window? You cannot even open a browser here. So it's not possible, right? So how do you log in? You still have to authenticate this terminal to access something else. And this particular method, what I'm going to show right now, right? This is the same method that we use in our local machines. For example, I want to deploy this code, this Terraform code on my AWS, right? How do I do that? Either I authenticate with a role, either I authenticate with user credentials. But the thing is, on these places, on these third-party terminals or on this black terminal, I cannot access the management console. I cannot open a browser and log in here, right? It won't authenticate like that. So in this manner, that's why they have created something called AWS CLI, okay? A command line terminal interface. So now I'll show you how to use that and how to authenticate yourself with that particular thing, okay? Can you please mute your mic? Okay, thank you. So to do that, you go to IAM user, okay? You see this user, cloud user, or any user, by the way, any user, like any user you can use. But remember that particular user should have that permission, okay? This user is kind of my root user. So obviously this will have the permission. Or I can do is like I can create a different user. Let me create a different user. And remember, this user will not have a management console because I don't need a management console. I'm just demonstrating for the CLI. This particular user will be created only for CLI. So even if you hijack this user, you cannot go and log into the management console. It will not have a username and password. So what I'll do is I'll just give it a name, maybe a test user, right? And you see, I'm not using this thing. So I will not give this user the management console because I'll be using this CLI. So next, what permissions to add? Let me add S3. For now, let me add S3 full access. By the way, you can granulate the user's permissions for this also. I'll show that, but let me create this first. Okay. So you see this user is created. And if I go here, there's no management console access. So I don't have a username, password, or a terminal to go and log in. So basically, how to use it, right? You go to security credentials here and scroll down below, and you will see that there is something called access keys here. Access keys. And this access keys can be used for programmatical access, like you can use with PowerShell, SDKs, or you can have direct API calls. How? Before you authenticate yourselves, you cannot use it. Okay. So to do that, we will create a key, a token. So if I click on create, just do others. That's okay. See, these usually there was not, but you can use this one or you can use this one. Doesn't matter. You can use for anything. Just go for others. That's okay. And click on next and create. So now you will see it created an access key. So this access key is username and password for my terminal. So because I cannot go to this management console and log in, right? I have created a user and access key via the terminal, and then I can use it to log in and do things. Let me demonstrate how. Okay. And remember one thing, save these keys in a very safe place, right? And when you don't need it, just delete it. Okay. So how do you save it? Because if I refresh the page, the keys will be gone, right? So what I'll do is I'll copy, maybe use my notepad. 1 second, let me use it. I'll just use my notepad. I can say access key, paste, and access token. Like this is my password. Key is the username and token is the password. So this secret access key. So secret access key means this is the password and access key is the username. So I copy and I paste. And do not share your keys with anyone, by the way. Okay, so you see last console sign in is none because obviously there will be none, right? It does not have any console access. So if you see console password not enabled because it does not have console access. So now what I'll do is I'll go back to the instance, right? Because right now if I run this, it doesn't have the permission, right? So what I'll do is I'll run this command called AWS configure. So if I do this, you'll see what happens. It is asking me for the access key. So let's do one thing. Let's copy and paste. Oh, sorry. Paste like this. Okay. Enter. Now secret access key. Copy and paste. Now for the region. See, region is optional, by the way. You can either put the region or either you can like not put the region. Both will work. Doesn't matter. This is optional, by the way. So if I want, I can always define the region. US East 1. Regions are defined like this. Never put North Virginia, Carolina. These names will not work. Whenever we are talking about regions, we are talking about these values: US East 1, US East 2, US West 1, right? So if you want to define a region, define it like this. So if I'm doing for US East 1, you can put US East 1, but that is optional. It is not like if I put US East 1, it will not work for US East 2. It will work. It will work. Credentials are global, right? When you log into the management console, you have global access. It's not like your commands will only work in North Virginia. It will work everywhere. That is why IAM is global, right? So even if you want, you can define the region. If you don't want, you cannot define the region. That's okay. It will work on both the times. Enter, enter. Output format, you can put JSON. It's okay. Same thing. You can skip this. Doesn't matter. The two important things. Without that, it cannot work. That is these two things. If you don't put these values, obviously nothing will work, right? Because username and password is required. Other things are optional. These two things are optional. So now I have given this permission, right? Now if I run the command, same command, this AWS ls thing. Okay, wait a bit. Wait, what happened? Huh? Okay, that's odd. Okay, okay. Let me see. Sudo. I forgot to use this thing. Configure. Yeah. So with sudo, the user changes. So that's why this thing. So if I don't use sudo, I think it should use without that. Let me. Yeah. If I don't use sudo, let me just use this command as it is. Yeah, it can run. But if I use sudo, it will ask me for like run that command using access ID key is not here. So usually what happens is whenever these access keys are required, right? If you're running with sudo is a different user. It's like a root user. So sudo commands will give this access keys for root user. And normally when you run without sudo, then this AWS configure will work with your Ubuntu user. That's what this thing. Okay, it's okay. We can run without that. So if I run this command, I have permission, I can run it, right? And that is being authenticated by who? This is authenticated by this user, right? Because this user has full S3 permissions here. If I remove this, let's see what happens now. If I remove this and I run this command same again, wait, it takes a bit of time. Here, access denied. Because again, same thing, no authority or no policy allows it. So it fails. Okay. So the same thing, the same policy I can use here. Remember, the policy does not change. The same thing I can use here. I can just do S3 colon that permission. Let me this one here. And by the way, you don't need to remember all the permissions. It's okay. You can there's AWS documentation. You can always use that. You don't need to remember everything. So I can do star, because obviously you cannot remember everything. Like this is something that no one can remember like that. So if I do next and give a name, maybe allow. Now you'll see because this user has this permission now, and if I run the command now, then it can read the thing. So we can use either a role, we can use user IAM, right? A user like this access tokens. So both will work. And whenever we'll be deploying things from third-party softwares or deploying things like via the Terraform or something, we'll be using this thing, this access tokens, because it will be locally on our site. And we cannot use roles directly from local PCs, right? To use roles, you'll have to be within the AWS base, right? Or you may have some kind of connection. But usually when we are deploying from our computers, we don't have that thing to access the roles. So in this manner, we use access keys. So give me 2 minutes, guys. I'm just going back. Just 2 minutes. Okay, I'm back. So like this, you can like authorize users, right? So usually like this is what you have or what you can do with IAM, right? You can use either a role or an IAM user to authenticate. Okay. So there are like different purposes for this. Usually in IAM users, we use CLI to like authenticate our local terminals here because we cannot use roles in this local terminals, right? And when on AWS architecture or any third-party softwares, you can use roles for that, like because they are like reachable. I'll show you that when we'll do that, when we'll connect Datadog or Splunk or something. I'll show you this, like how this will work. Okay. But this is what you have in AWS IAM. Now the last thing. So if you remember right now, I talked about this deny policy, this explicit deny, right? So the thing is, if you know, what I did is I created a role, right? I created a role and I added the deny to this role, correct? I added the deny to this role, and this role is being used by an EC2 instance, correct? This role is being used by an EC2 instance. So what will happen is this instance will not be able to use that permission because they are denied. Am I right? Like, is that clear? This is what we did, correct? Now, tell me something, because we have this explicit deny on this role, right? What if, guys, this is the question for you, okay? So what if I created one more role and I attach this to a different EC2 instance maybe, right? Because one instance can only have one role, and this role is like attached to this particular instance, maybe instance one. On instance two, I create a different role, right? Not this one. This is role one, I create role two for this thing. And this one only has an allow. Correct. So what do you think what will happen? This instance, will it be able to list, or it will also get an explicit deny list permission? What do you think what will happen to instance 2 if it tries to list the buckets? Let me know, guys, you understood my question, what I'm trying to say.
So please come again.
Okay, I'm saying that there is instance 1 with role 1, right? This role 1 is have a deny policy inside it, and it is denying to list out anything, right? And this role is attached to instance 1. Now I created one more role, maybe call it role 2, okay? A different role from this one. And I attached it to a different EC2 instance because each instance can only have one role at a time, okay? So I attach this role 2 to instance 2, and this role does not have a deny, but it only has allow. So what will happen if I do allow, if I run the list command here on this instance? Will it allow, will it see the list, or it will be denied as well? Like here, I know it will be denied, right? But what will happen here? Did you guys understand? Or I repeat the question again?
Yes, please repeat the question again, sir.
Okay. So what I'm saying is I created a role. You remember this whole scenario, what we did just now, right? We created a deny and then it explicitly deny everything, correct? But the thing is, on a single instance, you can have only one role, correct? That's why I had to create instance 2, right? A second instance. There I created a new role. And this role does not have a deny. This only has a allow, right? And this role is attached to this instance. So, and this role also exists. This role also exists, but they are two different roles, right? So here I know this will be denied, right? Because there's an explicit deny. What will happen if this instance run this command, this list command? Here it is like only allow is there, and there's no deny. But the deny is in a different role. Will this role also be affected with this deny?
So I think they'll be an allow. I think they won't be any denied.
I'll repeat again, sorry. Is it like, will it get denied or not?
So there will be no deny.
Okay,
it will still come to allow.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you guys are correct. So, but remember, there was one more specification, what I said. For example, I said as an organization, I want to deny something. do a blanket ban. I want to deny everyone. No one should be able to, because see, this is very specific request from the from the company, correct? I want to say that whatever rule, because see, same thing as a hacker, if a hacker comes in, for example, right, and I have denied a single role, correct? That particular hacker can create a different role, attach that role, and work, because obviously this is a different role, so it will be allowed, right? So what was the meaning of using a deny? You cannot just specify. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? I don't want to specify to a different role. I'm saying it can never be used by any role. Then
please come again. So please come again.
I'm
Please
saying,
just retake
I'm
it.
saying,
Yes,
okay, I'm saying, for example, I want to deny a particular permission from my whole organization, from my whole account, right? So if you give that explicit deny to a different role, like to a single role, you attach it, and obviously that won't affect a different role, right? So a hacker can come in and create a different role, like that role will allow and attach that role to the EC2 instance, correct? And now this EC2 instance will start allowing everything. But as a company, I have specifically said that this particular permission cannot be used by anyone. So how do you think you can implement? Because again, you understand the problem, right? A user can create a new allow role, attach that role, and then it will start working, because that role does not have any deny. So what happens to this organization request? How will you implement it? Did you understand the point what I'm trying to say? I want to make it apply on everywhere.
You're kind of fast. Like this the recent question, you're kind of fast. Please,
For example, okay, for example, let me put it in a very simple method. Okay, you have house one, right? Maybe it's your house, right? It's your house, and this is my house. Remember, we had a person that you don't like, person one, right? And then there's a person two, correct? So because you don't like this person, you won't allow it. They have an explicit deny, correct? In your home, they cannot come in, but in my home, they can come, correct? It's because you're a different person, I'm a different person. Maybe I don't have any grudges to this person one. I will allow him, correct? You understand this part? Because we are two different persons, same, we have two different roles, right? One is allowing and one is denying. So obviously, wherever it is denied, this particular permission cannot be used, or this particular person cannot go in, right? But what I can do is I can create a different place, I can go to a different place, and they will allow me, right? But what if my whole society says that this person is not allowed? How will you implement that? This person is like, I want this person explicitly denied by the whole society, not even just by home to home.
So I think you implement an explicit deny.
What if you have 100 homes? You cannot just go directly to each 100 homes and like tell them one by one. You cannot do that, right? It's not efficient. Maybe you have 1,000 homes, so you cannot explicitly go there. So usually, what do? We do an yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, I was like, you put a policy for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. You do an announcement. You put posters and all those things, right?
Yes.
So usually in AWS also you can do that, but that process is a bit different here. Okay, that thing is called SCP, a service control policy. I was giving this example so that you can remember this thing, because sometimes people don't use it too much, right? Because this is so powerful. I'll tell you what it can do. Okay, so SCPs can put a blanket ban or a blanket deny. That means if you create an SCP, right, this SCP will be applied on each role, each user, everyone, whoever can use a permission, right? The SCP will affect them. So roles, groups, and users all will be affected by the SCP. So usually what we do is we create an SCP, right? Same thing, same thing. We put a deny and we say same. If you do allow, then everyone will allow it. Like you can create those permissions. So SCP is like a directive that you have to follow. So if SCP says deny this thing, right? everyone denies that. You're like a leader. If you say that this particular thing is denied, everyone will boycott, everyone will deny it. Get it? And what by everyone I means everyone. Even a root user cannot override this thing, SCP's permission. You guys understand how powerful this SCP is? Even root users cannot override SCP permissions. So if I say SCP, for example, let me give you a very good example, right? So you remember root user is kind of a super user who can do anything, right? Usually that's the meaning of a root user. Like they can do everything on a particular environment. They're like gods, right? But
Yes,
as
sir.
a company policy, I say that no one should be able to do it. So what I do, I create an SCP. So for example, I create an SCP that no one can create a Lambda function or a S3 bucket. No one can create. I say deny S3 create bucket, right? That policy I put here, correct? So if I do that, so what will happen is any user that comes in and that tries to create the bucket, even if they have in IAM, they allow themselves, doesn't matter. Obviously they'll be denied, right? Because it is an explicit deny. But what if a root user comes in and then they try to create an S3 bucket? They should be able to, because there's a root user, right? This deny should not work on them, correct? Because they are root, they can do anything, right? But the thing is, SCPs are so powerful, they will even deny the request of root users. That's why SCPs are like a two-edged sword. If you define wrongly, SCPs are used for system-wide, you can say permissions, right? If you deny something that was not meant to deny, for example, I say S3 create bucket, right? Every other permission will work, only create bucket will get denied. But if I put S3 star, that means you are denying the whole S3 bucket. Even if you create IAM policies with S3 permissions, everything will be denied. So that's why you do not granulate here. You do not granulate here. Okay, so deny, you understand, right? So whatever I deny, that thing cannot be used, correct? What if, answer me this thing. Did you guys understand this deny policy? If I say deny S3 star, right? This will deny. Like no one can create anything or no one can do anything related to S3. Is that clear? In SCP, if I do this, what will happen? Guys, yes and no. For example, as a leader, I say that this particular person will not be allowed in my society. What will happen?
So I think
They will not be allowed.
the SP
right?
will not everyone else will allow.
Yeah, or this person cannot work in my society, or this person will not get into my society, right? They'll be denied, right? As an SCP, as I said, SCP can override anyone's command, anyone. Even the root users cannot do those things what SCP denies, okay? So if I write a policy which says deny anything related to S3, so you cannot create, you cannot list, you cannot do anything related to S3, correct? Everything will be denied for everyone, right? So anyone, including the root user, cannot do anything related to S3. Is that clear? Like this is clear now? If you create a policy like this? Now answer me this. What if I create a SCP policy? Again, same thing. See, now there's a turn of event, you can say. If I say allow S3 colon star, now can anyone tell me what will happen? Again, if I'm not denying, everything is already allowed. So why use an allow? SCP also has an allow.
Everyone to be,
but they can already do that, right? If I go to IAM, see, now it is not, we are not talking about IAMs, we are talking a global wide things, right? So if I put a deny here, even if you allow in IAM, you will already be denied because SCP says you're denied. So even if you create an IAM role or policy or anything, right, you will still be denied, correct? Now, why do I need to create an allow in SCP? Because SCP is specifically used for denying, right? If SCP is denied, you're denied. Why use an allow? You're already allowed. You can just create an IAM policy to allow and you already have the permission. So why use an allow here? Why SCP needs to say that, okay, you are allowed. And then you can create a permission and then you will be allowed. You can already do that. with the permission. You can already create an IAM policy that will allow yourself, and you can use it. You don't need an SCP allow specifically. So if I create this policy in SCP, what will happen? What do you think?
So I think that because SCP is a God user, even if someone else denies it, because SCP has insisted that it should be allowed, it is the
No,
default.
but I can.
It is.
You are going to a correct path, but what if, like SCP says allow it, correct? What if I go to IAM and deny from here this IAM policy? I create a deny policy. What will happen? Will this override the deny also? SCP policies allow.
I think you still allow. I think SCP will override it.
One by one. I
think SCP will over. Okay.
Okay. Now you can go ahead. He already told me the answer. It will be allowed.
Yes.
So one says allow and other one says what? Let me see the names.
So okay. I was trying to say that, yeah. I think SCP is going to override the
deny policy. Okay. Okay. So Chi says you SCP will deny. And how do we pronounce your name?
So I say SCP will override the allow. The override is deny, sorry, so SCP will allow it.
Okay. Okay, so again, let me reiterate. No one can overwrite a deny. It will still deny. Okay, so it will be denied. If you put in policy, it will be denied. SCP cannot even overwrite a deny. So why use this? You got the answer right. Like it will not allow, it will still deny. If you put a deny will always overwrite everything. Then why use allow in SCP if I can deny directly from the IAM? Think it's very like you can see the answer. Let me again tell you, okay? If SCP, I put a deny for a particular permission, right? It will deny everywhere in the whole account. Even if you create an IAM allow permission, it will deny, right? Deny, as I said, deny is very powerful, right? But if I put an SCP allow and put a resource name, a permission there, now what do you think will happen? That's why I'm saying SCP is really powerful, but if used properly, otherwise it can mess up your whole environment. So usually this is the thing that messes up everything in your environment. This thing can mess up your whole environment. But how? This is not harmless, right? This thing doesn't look harmless. By default, you're already allowed. So how can it harm your environment? Now you guys want to think like, what can be the case? How can it harm my environment? Because with IAM, I could already have given this permission and it would have worked. So why put a policy in SCP like this, allow? How can this harm me? Anyone wants to try? Take a minute, think, and then I'll tell you the answer. Okay, no one. Okay. Let me tell you, okay? Remember what I said about SCP. Whatever SCP says, that happens, correct? No one can overwrite. Even root user cannot overwrite, correct? Whatever SCP says. And remember one thing, we are talking something specifically. That means like whatever SCP says, specifically that happens. Specifically. That means is if SCP says S3 will be allowed. So what do you think? What will happen? You can answer this, I think. If SCP says S3, all the permissions of S3 is allowed, what will happen? It will be allowed. Guys, I'm asking, like it will be allowed, right? But remember the term I'm talking about. It's specifically. That means if SCP says S3 will be allowed, then it means only S3 will be allowed. Did you understand now what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Everything else is denied. Whatever you put under allow in SCP, only those things will be allowed. Everything else is denied. Everything else. Now you cannot do anything apart from creating S3, listing out S3, everything. My whole account is denied. Even if I create allow and everything is denied by default. Only S3 is allowed. Do you understand now how it can harm your environment? So if you create some policy like this, right, it will only allow that particular thing to happen. Everything else is denied now. Even the root user cannot create anything, cannot delete anything apart from S3. That's why, first of all, you don't granulate. And if you are creating accounts, because usually in organizations you have multi accounts, right? For example, I say I want to create an account for database users, okay? And I only want database activities to happen there. So usually what I do is I create an SCP and I only allow database services there. Once I allow database services, everything else is denied by default. So only database services will work. Okay. So that is the use of this SCP. And by default, we use denies so that like in the whole environment, I just don't want to, or I don't want to let them to use this specific thing. So I can use this particular thing. So it can work in both the ways. It depends on you, how you want to create an SCP. Right? So basically, if you don't want to affect all the services, just use deny. It will only deny those services that you want, right? But if you want to use only specific services, only in that case you use allow. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's like in a society, if I say this person is allowed, that means only that person is allowed in the whole society. Everyone stays out. Only this person is allowed. That's how SCP works. It is very specific. SCP is specific. So if it says this is denied, that means only that is denied. If it says this is allowed, that means only that is allowed, nothing else. Okay, that's why it is like very complicated and it's not used widely. So people do not use that because it's like if it is used incorrectly, it can deny your whole environment, and even the root user won't be able to do it. So, for example, if I say console login, right? If I deny console login, even the root user cannot log in anymore. So I will lock you out, everyone. I'll lock out everyone. Do you get, like, did you understand the problem? So if anyone writes like you cannot log in, deny VSCP, you will lock you out yourself. It's like you put the keys inside and now you cannot access it. The only means was to use the key, and now the root user is also locked out. So that's why SCPs are not like something that you create without thinking. Okay, so SCPs are like really specific and you need to be very careful what you write there, because whatever you are writing, that will be applied on the whole account. Even on the whole organization, you can apply that. So SCP is like really, you will have to like really careful when using SCPs. Is that clear? SCP is clear? In SCP also you create the same, yeah, in SCP also you create the policies like this. SCP also works on this thing, these policies. The only thing is, if I create this policy in SCP, only this thing will be allowed now. Everything else is not. So everyone can list the buckets and do nothing else. On the whole account, they cannot do anything else. And if I do this, then that means only this is denied and everything else can be used. So it depends on you how you create the policy in SCP. So SCP is same, this thing as well. But it's not like a role. You just go and define the policy like where there, see service control policy. You go here and like I don't have permission here. I'll show you the SCP later. But usually here you go and you will it will open like this only, like the same place. It will show that you can create a policy. When you create a policy, it will be applied everywhere. Okay, so IAM is done. Like there's nothing else in IAM, by the way. Now, before we go, right? Let me, because the next topic will be about containers, right? Let me just give you a brief on containers, like what are containers and what we'll be working with in the next classes. Okay. So basically, containers are really fun, by the way. So if I tell you in a brief, like what containers are. So now I think everyone should be familiar with VMs, the virtual machines, right? Virtual machines are basically computers on cloud, right? Like they are the similar machines like you're using laptops, right? If I put your laptop on cloud and I give you the access, like you take the access remotely because obviously you cannot access the like you cannot have the hardware with you, right? So usually what we are doing is I'm giving you laptops but without a hardware. So I'm telling you that you can remotely connect, right, and use the laptop or use the machine, but I will not give it to you. You can remotely connect from anywhere. That is the, you can say, the benefit of using that thing is, so I can say that wherever you go you can remotely connect to it, but I cannot give the hardware. That is what a virtual machine is. A virtual machine is a physical machine, but where you don't have like you can say physical access to that machine. You are remotely connecting to that machine. That is what a virtual machine is. You're virtually creating a machine. That machine is virtual, it's not physical, right? So that machine is similar to your same machine, like to your machine, to your Windows laptop, to your Mac laptop. That same machine is the, like it can do everything what your machine can do because they are similar. The only thing is that is virtual and you have a physical laptop with you, right? So your machine is called a physical laptop, physical computer, or a physical machine. And this machines that we take on cloud, these virtual machines are called virtual machines because they are virtually given to you. You can remotely connect, but you cannot have them physically with you, right? That is a virtual machine. Now, what are containers? If I talk about containers, containers are also machines, but they are called micro machines. So let me just tell you, okay? So containers are also machines. They are also machines, but the only difference between containers is, you see, for example, you have Windows laptop or I have Windows laptop, right? Think like this. Think it in a professional way. Why we require a container and like why we require a machine. For example, I have a Windows machine, right? In the Windows machine, when you get a Windows machine, you have a lot of things installed, pre-installed, correct? I have Edge browser installed. I will have maybe this Copilot installed. I have this store installed. I have this Xbox installed. Everyone will have it if you are using Windows. Guys, you have it, right? Everyone will like get all these things. A music player, a video player, correct? Everyone has it. In a full-fledged machine, you will have it, right? But answer me this: if I'm creating a machine, right, in a company, correct? Here I want to deploy my WordPress application. Maybe this machine will only be used for deploying WordPress, correct? And you remember, whenever you are installing this much in your machine, what are you compromising with? You're compromising with your memory. Obviously, this will take memory, right? This will use your storage, correct? This will put strains on your machine. For example, if I see right now what is running on my PC here, you see a lot of processes are running, a lot of them, right? And they're eating up my memory, eating up my CPU processing power, right? Eating up my disk, correct? They are utilizing these things, right? But what if I remove all those things and I just want to keep what I need? For example, I want to use only a notepad. I don't need anything else. I will use this PC for only writing down my notes. I will not use it for anything else. So if I only use a notepad, do you think this much processing power will use, or it will get used by my PC? Do you think it will use that much processing power? Think in terms of companies, because the more processing power you want to use, the more you'll have to pay. And companies want to reduce as much as possible. They want to cut the cost. They only want to run their workload. Because, for example, you are in a company, right? You're deploying a WordPress. So you want it to be a web server, correct? What do you think? Will you be running music videos on this machine? Will you do that? Where you're running a website, will you run videos, YouTube or anything like that? Will you run here, or will you need a browser or anything?
No, sir. I don't think so.
You don't want to do that, right? So basically, what will happen is the more you install on this machine, obviously that will eat up your memory, that will eat up your processing power, that will eat up your storage, correct? We don't want to invest that much because I'm not running, I don't want even those things to be running here. I just want a simple thing that, okay, I want to run a web server. So I just install a web server and I only want that on this machine, nothing else, correct? So that's where containers come in. In physical machine or in virtual machines, you will get everything pre-installed, right? Because without it, these machines cannot work, right? These are full-fledged machines. They will have everything. But containers are called micro machines. Micro machines means they have bare minimum things installed in it. They are bare minimum, like bare metal. Bare metal means there's nothing. It's like that machine will only have those things that makes the machine run. Like obviously, see, like this. If you are a human, right? Without clothes, you can live. Without home, you can live, right? But you will need bare minimum things. You will need food that you will require. Without that, you cannot live, right? Like maybe you will need a home, right? So there are bare minimum things. After that, like if you have food, you have home, you have clothes. After that, everything is optional, correct? Everything is optional. You may have a car, you may not have a car, but your life can go on without that. They are not compulsory, they're optional, correct? But you can survive without a car. You can survive without maybe a bicycle or anything, any luxury items. You can survive. You can survive on the bare minimum things, right? So to keep your lifestyle, to keep your lifestyle cost very low, what do? You need you need food, you need home, you need maybe clothes, right? That is a bare minimum that you require. So usually companies do the same thing. They do not require, they don't want to overutilize things. They just want the bare minimum things because obviously they want to cut the cost. They want to think, they want to keep the cost as minimum as possible or as low as possible. So usually they use something called containers. So containers are called micro machines or microservices. The only drawback of containers are they are full machines. By the way, they are machines only. They can run everything. They can run operating system like this. There is a container that can run Ubuntu. There can be a container that can run WordPress. But the thing is, they're bare minimum. So these machines have a limitation where they can only run one process at a time. So if I'm running a web server, this container will only run a web server. It cannot run anything else. So if I enable web server here, it will run web server. If I create a database in this machine, right, then it can only run a database. It cannot have anything else. They're very small machines. They do not take a lot of resource. So for example, if you see in Windows, right, you require at least 2 GB of RAM to run or 4 GB of RAM. That is the bare minimum that Windows require, right? Whereas the containers can run on 128 MB of RAM as well. They require so much less power. They require so much less storage to run. I'll demonstrate in the next class, but containers are machines only, but they can run only one service at a time. They are created for running bare bone, you can say, workload. They can run one workload at a time. They don't require other things to be running there. That's why the containers were introduced, because we don't want full-fledged machine, because full-fledged machines are costly. They require a lot of storage, they require a lot of memory, they require a lot of processing power. Whereas containers do not require those things. So if you remember, we were creating virtual machines, right? And you remember when I was creating a virtual machine, I said that use only less memory, right? Because they will be physical machines, right? And if a machine requires 2 GB of RAM, then only use 2 GB of RAM, right? Then only you can run. But usually what will happen is, let me show you like in this manner. So for example, you have a PC which have 4-core CPU and maybe 8 GB of RAM, right? So if you create a virtual machine, if I create a VM, yeah, anything, maybe VirtualBox or VMware or anything, whatever I use, right? So what do you think? How many machines I can use? Maybe my machine require 2-core CPU and maybe 2 GB of RAM. This is the bare minimum thing I require for my machine. What do you think? How much machines can be, or how much virtual machines can be created on this machine with a 4-core CPU and 8 GB RAM? You cannot create more than 2, right? Because maybe you create like 1-core CPU, 2 GB RAM. Now only 8, like from 8, only 6 GB is remaining. Now you create one more 1-core 2 GB RAM. Now 4 GB is remaining here. right? Because you want, see, you want your machine also to have it, because this machine is also running a virtual machine. Sorry, this machine is also running a operating system, and that operating system requires some memory and things to run, right? So you can not create more than 2 or 3 machines here, virtual machines here, right? Because after that there's a limitation. This PC also requires some memory to run, correct? But when you are running containers on the same machine, you can run, like where you're running 2 virtual machines, right? You can run the same workload on containers. Like basically, you can run more than 10 containers or 20 containers here on the same machine. So rather than creating the whole machine, because you have to run only a web server, then why give this many memory where you can run like 10 containers on this place? Why create a machine to run only one workload that you can do with a container? So usually what happens is whenever a machine is created, right? Whenever we go to containers, so if a machine, because full-fledged machine will have everything pre-installed in it, right? And they will take up your memory. Whereas a container is a bare bone. You can run your workload whatever you require. It will not have anything else. So if I want to run a web server, I will only run a web server. I will install Apache. I will run my WordPress there. That's it. It will not run anything else, because that is what my workload was. I just wanted to run a website. Why do I require these things to be installed already? Because if these things are installed, they are eating up our memory and everything, right? And I will require a large configuration of machine, right? Like that machine will have a large configuration. It should have at least 2 GB RAM. It should have at least 1 core CPU. Whereas a container can run on like maybe 128 MB of RAM, or maybe zero point 0.5 core of CPU, right? So containers are also machine. In a brief, containers are also machine, but remember the drawback is they can only run one workload at a time. They cannot run everything. So if you want to run a WordPress, right, in a machine, you can install database also. You can install WordPress also. You can install everything, multiple things on a machine, on a virtual machine, on a physical machine. You can do that. On a container, you can only run one workload at a time. So for example, if you want to run a WordPress, in WordPress, you require 2 things: Apache server, that is a web server, and a database, right? So in a single machine, you can install both of them. It will have that many power, that much power, right? But in a container, you will have to run web server in a different container, database in a different container, and then connect them together, and then you will get the WordPress website. But a single container cannot run both. It cannot run. It cannot have database and web server at the same time. It will only run one workload at a time. A container. That is the drawback of a container. It can only run one container or one workload at a time. So if this was my container, I could have only used maybe Chrome only, and these I cannot use. For these, I should have like created different containers for them. Is that understandable, guys? Did you understand what a container is? This is machine only, but it can run only one thing at a time. But they require so much less power, so much less memory usage, right? So that's why it is like something that companies go for, because that's really costly. Because when in terms of companies, right, you have to pay for all these things. So if you have an option where you can go with lower configurations and still your workload will work fine, why not? Why not save on money? Did you guys understand that? We will come back to this again in the next class, but I was just giving you a overview. Okay, it's okay. No worries. Don't get confused. But usually, like this is what will be going on. So right now we will be working with virtual machines, like we were working with virtual machines, right? Now I'll show you how containers work. So containers can run only one workload at a time. So for example, if this PC is a container, it would be running only a whiteboard, right? And if I wanted to run all these things, I would have like different containers for different things. I will demonstrate that, but just understand like it is also a machine, but it can only run one service at a time. That's it. Okay. So that's it for today, guys. Just practice, please. Do practice. Come up with the questions. Note down your questions, right? If you don't understand something, if you're doing troubleshooting, if you're getting some errors, come back to me. We will discuss, right, how to like resolve those things, and I'll demonstrate that again, like how to do those things properly. Okay. So do practice, and yeah, that's it. Okay, guys, take care. Good day. Let's meet on Monday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Have a good day.